Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Think Clinical podcast. My name is Hamza. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for joining us each and every single week. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far, and just like every other week, today we'll be talking about some very, very important topics again around healthcare entrepreneurship, building successful healthcare businesses, and everything you need to know that you probably don't know now. This will help you refocus your attention to what needs attention in your business. So my name is Hamza. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share. And today we'll be talking about how to run a clinic like a scalable startup. So we have to start looking at a couple of things in the context of how these tech startups have been scaling. And basically, what have they been looking at? What have they been considering when they are scaling? What's the thought process when these tech companies start scaling? What are they trying to solve? What do they try to get ahead of to be able to scale? So we want to start looking at running clinics, running hospitals, running your startup businesses, thinking like the way these startups think, especially when you want to scale your business. So, and then I'm going to be talking about this in the context of these renowned companies like Airbnb, like Uber. Like, we will be looking at what they actually, or how their thought process has been that has led them to be able to scale at the rate at which they've been able to scale. Now, they've been able to do this without compromising quality of care. They've been able to do this without compromising standards. And for sure, we should be able to do this in the healthcare space without compromising any of these items. So today we'll be looking at these things. And when we look at how these companies have really scaled, one fundamental truth is that they've been able to eliminate friction in every transaction they make. And transaction here is not financial in every context. Transaction here is just every interaction you have with a client or with a patient, and in our context we talk about patients. So when we look at the hospital setting or the clinic setting, some of the transaction points that we look at is that the patient calls, that's the point of contact. You book an appointment for this patient, that's another point of contact. Patient arrives, patient checks in, patient gets the care they need, patient checks out, patient pays. So these are the different transaction points, and when you have friction in any of these transaction points, it could cause it could lead to a chain of reactions that can cause your growth as a company. So this is the same playbook Uber, Airbnb, and all these tech companies use to scale. Think about it. So I always say in some of my episodes and my blogs that Uber they don't create cars, they don't buy cars. They created more efficiency. And what they did was basically to reduce the friction between the riders and the drivers. They automated some of the mundane tasks, and they tracked the right metrics obsessively to be able to make sure that they were on top of what they needed to accomplish from the client experience standpoint. And this is we can apply those same efficiency formulas in our clinic, because most healthcare founders are leaving about 40% of their growth potential on the table when you look at all these things into detail. So that's what we'll be looking at today, and let's look at it. But in the next minute and a half to about 3 minutes, let's look at what the startup efficiency model looks like. Because if you have that startup efficiency model and the mindset behind it, you'll be able to see how or where the opportunities are. Now, let's look at this in the context of maybe two dental practices. Both have great patient reviews. One of these patient companies is doing 1.2 million annually with a founder who is working about 60 hours a week, right? Let's look at the other dental office where they are doing 3.8 million and the founder is only working 35 hours a week. What do you think the difference here is? It's not about how the clinical scale, because they both get the same feedback from patients in terms of their reviews. It's that one is thinking more operationally and one is not. So a lot of the thought process has to start from the context of how do I scale first. And in many clinics and many hospitals, just like we've been trained, and I have been trained as a medical professional to be compassionate, to care about patients. We run hospitals and business and these clinics like passion projects instead of scalable businesses. So and again, this is why we went to medical school, but we have to start looking at this in terms of the reality of it, because if you are not able to grow your business, a lot of the time we have these businesses running out of resources or money to actually continue operating, and the best solution sometimes is for them to either join bigger organizations or merge with other groups so that they have more resources. They can leverage each other's resources to be able to get those done. And as long as you look at this, you should always understand that you need to start moving towards the area of systemizing all your operations. Otherwise, you continue to have bottlenecks in everything you do. So when we look at the research, for instance, McKinsey in 2022, they have data showing healthcare practices that systemize their operations. And this data indicated that these hospitals that systemized all their operations grew 2.3 times faster than those that rely on ad hoc founder-led management. So, and this is not just for people. You cannot start a business that you actually do not want to grow, right? Unless it's one for non-profit. And secondly, you have an endless source of income, as I said, like a non-profit that keeps financing all your activities. Otherwise, there has to be, even with that, there has to be some self-sustaining model behind it, because at some point there'll be donor fatigue and you have to be ready to generate income within your own operations. Now, this is the mindset shift you need to make. Then this is the first segment of it. You need to stop thinking like a solo provider and start thinking like an operator. Ask yourself, if I had to open a second location tomorrow, what would break? And then that's where the gap is, and that's where your system's gap is, and that's what you should be paying attention to. Now, the formula here that I want to share with you is that when you want to think about efficiency, look at how you can reduce cycle time, add automation, and add KPI tracking. And that's the scalable patient flow formula that you need to use. Again, look at your cycle time reduction, add automation to it, and track with KPIs, and that's how you can actually get this going. So in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to spend some time to really break this down. What does cycle reduction mean? Because we said the first item that you need to reduce is cycle reduction. What does that mean? Now, when again I'll go to the Uber model, and they scaled over just one metric: time to ride. So how much time do I need to wait to be able to get a ride? The shorter it is, the more people want to use it, the more people you have on it, the more money drivers make, the more money the company makes, right? Your clinic has the same opportunity to reduce time to care. So instead of time to ride, you can actually increase the time to care. Make sure that is streamlined in such a way that patients are able to get in, see providers, and get out with the most efficiency that you can get from that. Now, when we look at the Harvard Business Review, which published a study that found that every 10 minutes that you cut from a patient cycle increased your patient throughput by 12%. Again, any 10 minutes that you're able to cut down from a patient's cycle will increase your patient throughput by 12%. And this reducing patient satisfaction. Now, again, as I said, when we are looking at these things and comparing them to other industries, you need to be careful that healthcare has its own unique challenges, and you have to be able to analyze these models in the context of healthcare to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So basically what this means is that most clinic owners would get it wrong because they think that by cutting down the time, they're rushing patients. It really doesn't. It actually means that you are eliminating the waste between the value adding activities, because it gets to a point, yes, you are adding value, but there's a lot of waste in those value adding activities. So and the Harvard study has shown that you can cut a patient appointment by 10 minutes, and it actually does not reduce the patient satisfaction or the patient experience overall. And so we have to look at this. Now, this is the practical playbook of how you can get this done. Now, your step one is time the flow. Break out your phone timer and track every step from when the patient walks in to when they walk out. And the average patient visit by the American Medical Association in 2023 data is 18 minutes with provider plus 10 minutes of admin overhead. So that's about 28 minutes. The question I have for you is that as a founder and as a the leader of your practice, what is that time looking like for you? That's the first step. And if you're able to break all these steps down and understand how much time goes into each of them, then you have to map your bottlenecks, which means that is the check-in paperwork taking 8 minutes? Is insurance verification slowing down scheduling? Is room turnover between patients the problem? Is the hygienist or the nurse, do they have to walk from one end of the hall to another end of the hall to be able to get instruments, or to just even to sterilize instruments? Because that time alone is a lot of time that could be saved. Or could that be moved closer to where they do their systems? If a hygienist has their ops on the other side of the room, is it possible to move the sterilization units to a place that is closer to them to be able to get it done? We have a 28 unit that basically you have to walk across the building to be able to get to the sterilizing equipment. But by just placing one at the other end of it, it saved a lot of time in a day to be able to get this done. Think about that. The 10th step is to implement, to pilot micro changes. Now, most people, when they start hearing or seeing some of these things, they try to just go straight to change everything, to do a general overhaul of everything. You have to make one change at a time. So test one change. And many dental and medical organizations, well, let's say dental organization means dental because that's what I work on right now, is that they cut hygiene visits from 60 to 50 minutes and reported a 20% increase in patient capacity. That's 8 more minutes. And as I said, the Harvard study actually showed that cutting that by from 60 to 50 minutes really does not affect patient satisfaction and doesn't really affect or negatively impact patient experience. It just takes away the waste between all the value added activities that you have. So the fourth one is to make sure that you are implementing these pilot micro changes. Do not overhaul everything at the same time. Now, the first step is use lean thinking. You have to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're thinking lean. Does the step add value to the patient? If it doesn't, get it out. If the answer is yes, keep it. Waiting room time, is it it's a non-value, right? Because most people don't want to sit in the waiting room for too long. FaceTime with provider is valuable, of course. Design your clinic around those ratios, making sure that you have the appropriate waiting area time, you have the appropriate face time with doctors and all those other issues that comes in. Now, when you have a family medicine practice, for instance, and you're able to map your cycle time and find patients and find out that maybe patients were spending about 23 minutes waiting because the front desk was verifying insurance manually during check-in, you can actually move the verification to scheduling call, where you get all the information and get all the things done before this patient walks in. This will cut the waiting time by 6 minutes at least. These are some of the efficiency measures you need to be looking at, and they translate directly to patient satisfaction. The second thing I talked about efficiency, remember when I talked about the efficiency formula, I said you're cutting cycle time, or you're reducing cycle time, that's one, and you're automating your front desk. That's it. So if you reduce cycle time, automate your front desk, and measure your KPIs. Those were the 3 things I said. They all lead to scaling your patient flow. Now, when you're automating your front desk, it's one of the things that we fail to appreciate is that the front desk is the most expensive piece of software you don't realize, and you are running this at a very expensive cost. So think about it. These front desk is the same place that patients are scheduled. This is where payments are processed. This is where your first line of customer service. This is your insurance verifier. There's so much that goes on at the front desk, but this is supposed to be done at human speed. So the Medical Group Management Association reports that practices can actually lose as much as $150,000 annually per provider just because of front desk inefficiencies. And these are some of the points or the dollar areas that you know, or you could leverage some of your resources back. So let's break down the 4 automation levers, and these ones have the highest ROI that you need to be looking at. One, when you have self-scheduling portals, so most clinics do not even have any form of online scheduling options. When you do not have online scheduling options, it actually reduces the chances, first of all, of getting new patients in, but most importantly, patients adhering to their appointments. Now, ZocDoc published the data in 2022 showing that practices using online scheduling reduced no-shows by 17%. Why do you think so? Because most people, when I go online and I schedule my own appointment and I choose my own time, I take more ownership and I have more ownership of that. And plus, your front desk isn't even playing phone tag with these people. So most people are not even seeing the value of these things. So that's the first thing. Make sure you are thinking about self-scheduling portals like online scheduling activities. The second thing that you need to be looking at is digital intake forms. So we have been very heavy on patient portal and putting forms in patient portals, because this helps the patient, first of all, to be able to complete all their patient information or patient forms before their appointment, and secondly at their own convenience, because they can sit in their home and on the weekend when they are more relaxed and don't have much to do, and don't have a provider or a front office person or an assistant waiting on them to complete it. They can actually get all these things done before they come in. So intake forms is the second thing. The third thing is AI insurance verification, which is becoming really matured. We have implemented a couple of those, and some of them have come up to be really, really good tools. And these are things that you need to be looking at, because if you can get your about 80% of your eligibility checks done by AI, then you have an advantage of at least eliminating that extra time and about $45,000 of labor costs. And one of my episodes talks about labor costs. You can eliminate that just by getting the right AI tool that will help you with insurance verification. When we look at payment automation at checkout, that's another thing that we can look at. You need a form of automated payment collection system, which means if you have a way of taking all co-pays, all deductibles, all co-insurances, if you're able to take these before the patient walks out, you're not spending resources printing statements and sending those out and allocating time for front desk people to be able to call these patients and follow them up and get all these things done. So that's a very important thing that you need to look at. So from your front desk, you have to look at all the things that could be automated, and I only mentioned a few here, from the online portals to your AI verification tools to your digital scheduling portals. I only make all your intake forms. I only make these because these are the common ones I've seen, I've implemented, and I've really seen the value that comes out of those. Now, when we are looking at tracking KPIs, which is the last component of that formula, because I said efficiency again is equal to making sure that, first of all, you are reducing cycle time, you are automating your front desk with things that are easily automated, and you are tracking your KPIs. So the third component of this efficiency model for scaling is tracking your KPIs. And when we look at tracking your KPIs, first of all, if you're not tracking KPIs weekly, you're not running a business. You are probably running a hobby or something. So, and this is grounded in research, because healthcare companies that are tracking at least 5 core KPIs scaled sustainably 3 times faster than those that did not, because you are able to pick up challenges early, you're able to see trends early, and you're able to fix them before they get in there. So the when you look at the dashboard for what you should be looking at as KPI, and just thinking about scaling in general, these are some of the KPIs that you can look at. One, you can look at cycle time per patient, right? Measure that, because it will help you know whether or not you are reducing or you are increasing. Look at provider utilization rate, because it will, you understand, because you have to use more than 85% of your slots per provider. That is what will help you there. Look at your no-show and your cancellation rate. These are things that you should be tracking. And your front desk call to appointment conversion rate, you have to measure that. In your revenue per provider per hour, these are some of the things that you can measure. Again, I'll tell the KPIs. One, you can measure cycle time per patient, provider utilization rate, no-show cancellation rate, front desk call to appointment conversion rate. And this is just because when you do things like scripting for your front desk, it actually just increases your conversions, like interventions like that will increase your conversion. And then revenue per provider per hour, these are the measures that you can actually use. So the last bit of information I want to share is that there's a compounding effect here, and from one office to many, because the moment you are able to gain 1% of efficiency, it compounds. Now let's look at this in a more comprehensive way. It's all math. Say you cut your cycle time by, let's say, 15%, right? And you automate 20% of your admin tasks at the front, like we mentioned, and you improve your no-show rate by 10%. Guess what happens? Your clinic can now handle 30 to 40% more patient volume without hiring new staff. And that's not incremental, that's actually transformational. And this is how startups scale. You have the same team, you have more throughput. That's the formula. And then it's how best healthcare operators also scale too, because you can use the same models, apply them in the context of healthcare, and be able to get the same results. Within 18 months, you would understand that most companies who actually follow these principles would grow. They will grow, and they can replicate these processes depending on in however number of locations that they may have. So again, cycle reduction plus front desk automation plus KPI tracking is equal to what? Scalable growth. This isn't a theory. This is the same playbook that these big companies like Uber, like Amazon, like Tesla, these are the difference they use. If you're applying it to something far more impactful than rides and packages, because in healthcare we talk about patients, you will be scaling and increasing the capacity for you to be able to provide quality healthcare to people. So here's your homework, and if you run a clinic by yourself, pick one bottleneck this week, time it, fix it, track it, and that's how you start thinking clinical. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been your host, Hamza Asuma. Thank you so much for joining us, and remember to subscribe, like, and share. We will see you in our next episode.